Morley Robbins, welcome to the Quantum Health Connection podcast. Thank you so much for being here. We are so excited to chat with you about all things minerals and energy production. It's going to be so fun.
Well, thank you. I'm delighted to be here. And I can't wait to see what trouble we get into stirring that mineral pot.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
certainly a pot.
Yeah. Speaking of minerals, let's just jump right in if that's okay. So, how does mineral imbalance affect or disrupt cellular energy production?
Wow. How much time have we got?
Much as you'd like to give.
Yeah. Um, no, it's fascinating. Um, what people don't appreciate is the the dynamic nature of our body. I mean, of course, we know we're always evolving, and there's a lot of work that goes into homeostasis. Um, that term actually was coined by a guy named Walter Cannon. He was a professor at Harvard Medical School. He's the guy who came up with that word.
Mhm.
Um, uh, but what's really important, obviously, is the mineral balance. And so, one fun way to study mineral balance is through a hair test. I'm sure you've seen them. And you get back the report, and there's this crazy display of bars that reflecting different mineral statuses. And my mentor, Rick Malter, actually was able to convert those minerals into a norm. So it put everything on. So it's like 42 units of calcium is considered normal, or 6 units of magnesium, or 24 units of sodium, 10 units of potassium. But what he did was he got it so that when the body's in balance, all of the minerals would touch the one bar,
Mhm.
the norm.
Yeah.
And I've done thousands of hair tests, but I've only seen one perfect hair test. It's
Wow,
amazing.
that's a lucky person.
Lucky
Wow.
person. But what's going to surprise you is to find out that that lucky person was 95 years old.
Wow.
She grew up on a farm in South Dakota, still
Mhm.
drank well water. She still wore 2-inch spike heels, not nun heels. And she had more energy than her 70-year-old daughter. And
Mhm.
I could tell there was something special about her. And I said, ma'am, I want you to do a hair test. And after she was visiting her daughter in the Chicago area, and after the third week, I said, I'll do it for free. And she said, you're on, young man. And I get the results back, and it was absolutely stunning. And I sent it to Rick Malter. I said, get a load of this hair test. And he'd know I had been doing hair tests for maybe 5 years at that point. He'd been doing hair tests for 40 years. He said, Mona, I've never seen a perfect hair test before. He was blown away by it. So
Mhm.
that's kind of backdrop to your question. Um, how can the mineral imbalances affect? Uh, I, there are a lot of moving parts, but there are a couple that I think are really important for us to focus on. Um, everybody knows that iron is very important in our body and in our being. Um, but for the most part, iron is a waiter carrying oxygen. I mean, that's probably
Mhm.
80% of the iron's function in our body is carrying oxygen. And the two principal proteins that involve iron are heme and iron
Mhm.
sulfur clusters. It turns out that 95% of the iron in our body is in heme proteins. So it's tremendous concentration of iron in the heme protein. And then the iron sulfur clusters, and they come in different shapes and sizes, but they're found principally in the mitochondria. And what the body has to do is remake these heme and iron sulfur clusters. And everyone likes to think of the mitochondria as a powerhouse. It's a powerhouse of the cell. No, it's not.
Mhm.
It's a recycling center.
Mhm.
It's recycling iron. It's recycling calcium. It's recycling amino acids. It's recycling energy.
Mhm.
ADP becomes ATP to come back to ADP and cycling back and forth. It's absolutely fascinating. Unless you have dysfunction, and then ATP is going to go all the way down to uric acid, and then you got a mess on your hands.
Yeah.
And for people who've had gout, have had elevated uric acid. Be thankful that that pain is in your toe and not your heart. Because if it was in your heart, you'd be dead. So uric acid is just a friendly way of telling you you got a problem with your uric acid. But the body needs, or the mitochondria need to recycle the iron. Now put on your thinking cap. What mineral do you think might be involved in that recycling program?
Well, I know magnesium and copper are certainly involved in that.
Yeah, copper especially. Very, very
Yes.
important, especially inside the mitochondria. And so when a mitochondria can't recycle the iron, it starts to fill up the mitochondria.
Yeah.
And it's in something called the labile iron pool, LIP. Now you have to be careful of that word labile, because if we're in English class, it means free, happy. But no, we're in biochemistry class, and labile means highly reactive. It's very
Mm.
it's very different in the biochemistry class. And so highly reactive iron builds up in the mitochondria. And what do you think it does to energy production? It tanks it.
Yeah.
And so this is a mechanism that is caused by stress. And so we've got acute stress and chronic stress. Acute stress, as you've noted, affects magnesium. It's going to be a magnesium burn rate. We lose it
Mm-hmm.
very quickly, along with the B vitamins. And then that's going to affect the Krebs cycle, especially the anaerobic side of glycolysis. 8 of the 10 enzymes in anaerobic glycolysis require magnesium.
Yeah.
That's important. And then if you get into the electron transport chain, that's where copper really shines. And they'll tell you that it's only complex 4, when in fact it's complex 1, 3, 4, and 5 have a
That all
relationship.
require copper, every one of those. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just, you have to really dig to find it. But the party line is, oh, it's just complex 4, just cytochrome C oxidase.
Mm-hmm.
And so the what happens is, as oxidative stress is building in the cell, it's going to affect the endoplasmic reticulum. And that's where proteins, it's a Chinese laundry is what it is. It's folding proteins. And then it goes from the ER into what's called the trans-Golgi network. Well, the TGN is where proteins get matured, where they're allowed to reach their fullest expression. Again, put on your thinking caps. What mineral might be really essential to fully mature the proteins? And it's
I'm gonna
copper.
guess it. I guess it's copper again.
It is copper. That's exactly right. It is copper. And what's amazing, Vanessa, is that it's really hard to find this truth. It's
Mm.
not on a one and done Google search. And when there's stress in the ER, as there would be if there's oxidative stress. Again,
Yeah.
let's go back to the fundamentals of the mitochondria. We got to turn this oxygen into water. It's the most
Correct.
important, I think it's the most important transaction on the planet. Turn O2 into
Absolutely.
2H2O. And when that happens, we have a Zen state, everything's good. ADP gets released, goes over to complex 5, becomes ATP, and everything's great.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't happen all the time. And they'll tell you that 2 to 3% of oxygen is going to get tweaked. It's going to become oxidative stress. That's if everything's in balance and we have homeostasis.
Right.
But when there
Otherwise, it would be more of that would be oxidative stress when you're not in balance. So
exactly,
if your minerals are not in balance, you're creating more oxidative stress in the
exactly.
system. Hmm.
As soon as you have rising oxidative stress, it's going to affect every part of the cell, but it's going to affect the um, endoplasmic reticulum, the Chinese laundry. And there's an enzyme in there called ER oxidase. So anytime you see the word oxidase, it means the body's using oxygen to empower something to happen. Okay. Again, put on your thinking cap. Can you guess what the mineral might be that powers ER oxidase?
Well, We're gonna guess it's copper again.
Ding, 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 ding. And so then if copper is not present, the oxidative stress is going to build. And guess what is released in the endoplasmic reticulum? Calcium. There's this
Yeah.
flood of calcium. And so going back to the hair test, if someone is a slow oxidizer,
Yes.
it has nothing to do with metabolism.
Mm.
Fast oxidizer, slow oxidizer. It's not a fast metabolism, slow metabolism. It's how quickly are you going to rust? That's really what it's telling us.
So a slow oxidizer would rust more quickly and a fast oxidizer would rust less quickly, or is that incorrect thinking? Because
Well,
I've had a few hair tissues done, a mineral analysis done, and I was very sick then, four lows pattern, very
okay,
depleted, slow oxidizer. And I was actually told, this is leading into one of my questions I have for you, is that I was told, oh, you have copper toxicity.
of
And what
course.
that I'm thinking now, listening to you, is more it's unbound. It's not getting where it's stuck in the tissues.
Right.
It's not getting where it's supposed to go. I'm not using
That's,
it
ex-
correctly. And
that's
I would
exactly
also
right.
say that my gray hair is an indication of that. Like I started going gray in my 30s. So,
Okay.
that also, because I know that there's copper has a lot to do with melanin, but I tan beautifully. So, I mean, that's also interesting parallel. So, I don't know. I was just all these questions in my mind come up. So,
No, you're connecting important dots. I'm still trying to work through, is the slow to rust or fast to rust? And so
okay.
it's intriguing that you jumped on fast to rust because I think the tendency is greater for that to
Hmm.
happen. And again, the I mean, I'm going to go. I can be such a nerd about this, but there's a really critical um, enzyme. It's called SERCA2,
Hmm.
SERC Roman 2. Well, that stands for sarcoplasmic endoplasmic reticulum calcium ATPase 2. Again, put on your thinking cap. Can you guess what mineral might make that circa 2 work properly?
I mean, it's got to be copper.
Right? And so if circa 2 is not happy, it releases the calcium into the cell.
Mm.
And you have calcification. And what's important about this is Dr. Fiedler was a famous um, Viennese physician a long time ago. And in 1899, he came up with this theory of stress. It's a really cool and very simple concept. He said, stress causes magnesium loss. Okay, I'm with you. That makes sense because it's the kinase enzymes that cleave off a phosphate with magnesium attached. It goes right into the urine. And that's
Hmm.
where the magnesium burn rate comes from is kinase enzymes responding to stress. Usually it's oxidative stress. So we've got stress causes magnesium loss. Magnesium loss causes electrolyte confusion
Yep.
because magnesium is in charge of the electrolytes, right? It's
Yes.
really the the, uh, the quarterback. And so then electrolyte confusion creates energy depletion. Well, when you have energy depletion, guess what's going to happen to the cell? It's going to die.
Yeah.
And cell death invites fibrosis. Actually, no, cell death invites inflammation, and then
Mm.
inflammation is followed by fibrosis.
Hmm.
So, what is fibrosis? It's putting calcium down. It's a cement to cover up the problem.
Yeah.
And so, what was the one thing that Dr. Fiedler forgot to tell us? What's the source of stress? It's oxidative stress.
Yeah.
And so we live on a planet with 21% oxygen. Oxygen is very important to our well being. We can't live without it, but we can't age without it either.
Yeah.
Oxygen is the source of all that oxygen that gets tweaked becomes a source of stress, which is then going to affect the minerals. So there's, layers and layers of these interactions. And then we can get into, you really want to get into some really wild stuff like potassium loss inside the cell. And,
Hmm.
and what's a really proven way to cause renal potassium wasting? Take vitamin D supplements.
Well, that's such an interesting correlation that I heard you talk about recently. So, because I would say 2019, I started taking 10,000 IUDs of
Wow.
vitamin D a day.
Right?
I would obviously never do that now. I would never promote vitamin D supplementation. I think it's a very bad idea. We should be making vitamin D from sunlight.
Sun.
Take
That's
your
right.
LDL cholesterol, get in UVB sunlight, and sulfate it and make it correctly. That's my,
Absolutely. Yep.
absolutely way to go. But I was not in the health space at all, very, very conventional. And my brother actually was the one, he's like, I was having some issues, and he's like, I think you should take vitamin D. You're having some immune issues. And I started taking it every day. And then I got sicker and I wound up getting a diagnosis of
Mm.
Hashimoto's.
Okay.
And interestingly enough, I
Okay.
had gone to a functional medicine doctor, and he's like, "Wow, your vitamin D's in 87. That's so great." And that is horrible. Like when it's that
I know.
high, like the store,
I
that's the
know.
storage form. And we can, if you want to, talk about that, that would be great for our listeners. The storage form was in 87, but that does not mean that's like almost vitamin D toxic, actually, at
That's
this
right.
point. Like that's
Yeah.
actually, and the thing that really blows my mind is to sit there in a functional medicine doctor's office when I didn't know anything then, and him tell me that that's so great
I
because
know.
his understanding is so poor of how these minerals, hormone, or how this hormone affects minerals and everything else. And I was like, whoa. Looking back on that now, I just have this really big thought that that vitamin D supplementation that I did for a long time was a part of the Hashimoto's diagnosis. And
Oh, I think it
also,
was.
oh, absolutely. I mean, you can't do that. And then also, I have still been trying to get my potassium up, was my brain correlation to that. Like potassium is a
Sure.
tough one for me. Yeah.
Well, it's tricky. And so it was Tom Ferris at Yale Medical School in 1962. I don't know. I think it's probably a pretty good medical school. He probably knows what he's talking about. But in 1962, he published an article, Vitamin D Supplementation Causes Renal Potassium Wasting. And I've said that probably 1,000 times in different podcasts and conversations, but I've never really known the mechanism. Now I know
Mhm.
the mechanism. And
Yeah.
there's a very important part of our kidney function. It's called the nephron. We have between 1 and 1.2 nephrons per kidney. And
Mm.
they're amazing parts of our body. I didn't know anything about the nephron. Now I are one. It's an incredible. There's a part of the nephron that's called the glomerulus, and that's actually Latin for ball of yarn. And so that ball of yarn is little capillaries, and there are parts of our body called podocytes. Pod is feet, and they wrap themselves around the capillaries, and that's
Mm.
where the first filtering takes place by the podocytes.
Hmm.
Now, guess what determines how many podocytes you have in your body?
Should we guess that it's copper or some?
Ding, ding, ding! I miss it's a
It's
It's
like
like,
how many
how,
things could copper do in our body? It's kind of like
see, the thing is, it's toxic, right? Don't you know it's
yeah,
toxic?
I really would love you to get back to that because is that what that is? Am I correct in my thinking with the copper toxicity when somebody says
Co-
that it's unbound, it's in the wrong place? Like
yeah,
what?
copper copper is toxic to pathogens and profit. Okay,
Okay, there you go.
so so um, so these little podocytes. Well, there's something called the Bowman's capsule that encircles this glomerulus in the nephron. And it's mind blowing. I mean, I've studied copper, I've studied ceruloplasmin. There's ceruloplasmin being made by this Bowman's capsule.
Mm.
Why?
Mm,
Because iron is coming through. Iron is in the blood, and we've got to make sure that that iron doesn't affect the kidney function. Then it goes into
mm,
something called the distal, no, excuse me, proximal tubule. Proximal is right next to the glomerulus. The proximal tubule plays this incredible function of filtering, and when it gets the minerals start to be filtered there, but then they have to go through the loop of Henle, and then on the proximal side or the distal side, the far side, that's where the real sodium and potassium filtering is taking place. That's
mm.
what vitamin D does, is it affects that distal tubule, and the potassium gets lost and goes into the urine, and that's not a good
Oh,
thing.
How does it
no.
That's
affect
not
it, Morley? What is the actual mechanism?
well. I'm still trying to work my way through it, but the thing is, what I do know is that there are what are called uremic toxins, and you've never heard of well, actually, you've heard of uric acid. That's a uremic toxin.
Yeah.
But there's one that's sort of the granddaddy of them all called indoxyl sulfate.
Mm.
You probably have never heard of it. Most people have
Mm-mm.
never, I mean, I'd never heard of it. I've talked to 50 practitioners, they've never heard of it. And if you want to create kidney disease, increase indoxyl sulfate. And there's a very specific mechanism that brings that about. And we can talk about that later if we want to. But the
Mm.
thing is, the body is very sensitive to these toxins, and it destabilizes energy production in the kidney. And the reason why that's important is that the sodium potassium pump, it's a sodium potassium ATPase, which means it's making energy to run that pump. But but what this mechanism does is it's like putting a wrench literally into the works, and then you can't make
Mm.
ATP, and then the potassium just drops through. So it's
Mm.
on so many levels, the body is dependent on this recycling of the minerals, on energy production to maintain that balance. And
Mm.
again, if we're making our body weight in ATP every day, that means that must be really important. And so that's why, again, that's what the book's all about. Cure your fatigue. You got to be able to make the energy so you can restore the health. That's really what the whole basis of the program is. And it's not understood by most practitioners, regardless of their training, just because they've been taught about disease. They believe in disease. Well, there is no disease. There really
Disease
is.
is lack of energy. That's what I
Yeah,
say.
that's exactly right.
Disease is
The-
literally lack of energy or an energetic disturbance, also, like some other disturbance,
yeah,
because we're also homeopaths, so I feel that as well. But
yeah,
yeah, it's lack of energy. You do not have enough cellular voltage. That is disease.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there've been quite a few homeopaths who've gone through the RCP Institute, and
Mm,
independently, they've all said, my clients who do the RCP respond the best to homeopathics,
That's
yeah.
cool.
which makes sense.
Makes
That's a really
sense.
cool thing.
Yeah.
And it's something else we can incorporate in our
Yeah.
practice. I mean, it's funny. I just finished your book, Morley, and I looked at all of your stops and starts of how to restore things. And I'm on all the stops. Like I had been
That's
doing all the
great.
stops for years because I've known, like I've done research and I've known to do all the stops. And I do some of the starts, but not all. But my body has never really responded very well to crude doses of minerals, like
Okay.
in those
Right.
forms. And I think it's because I had such a four lows pattern and I'm still
Right.
sensitive and like it's taking time and I'm using homeopathic tissue salts to support that and get
Sure.
that back in balance, which I think is really, really helping. So it's just so interesting. But yeah, I was happy to see. I'm like, well, I'm not doing any of the things I shouldn't be doing. That's good. And I am doing some
Yeah.
of your starts, but not all.
That's
So
okay.
yeah,
You got to start where you feel most comfortable. But
yeah,
I was in a four lows pattern when Dr. Liz came into my life. Uh, at one point, when she was over at my apartment, she opened up a cabinet where I had all my supplements, and she went, you take all this?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "It really keeps me going." And she said, "Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to do a hair test, and then you're going to stop this nonsense for 3 months, and then we're going to do another hair test."
wow.
So my true being was a four lows. I mean,
Yeah,
I was after 20 years of doing consulting and getting by on 4 hours sleep, thinking I was Superman. It took
yep,
me a year of sleeping 8 to 9 hours a night before my four lows pattern changed.
yeah.
I mean, people don't like that vitamin Z, but it's really important. If you want to heal the adrenals, you've got to have sleep. Really,
A
Yes,
really
hundred
this is
important.
percent.
true.
And I did the
Uh,
same thing with the burnout. I used to have
yeah,
sleep only 4 to 5 hours. And yeah,
right.
no, I've slowed down so much in my life. Like it's just was so absolutely necessary to be feeling in a
No, it
better
is.
place. Yeah.
No, and we get caught up in society. They want us running marathons when actually
Yeah.
just a walk around the block is all you need to do.
Yeah. Agreed. Totally.
So hopefully that was sort of a long-winded kind of wandering response to your excellent question, Heather, because it's just that's a half a dozen minerals. I mean,
Mhm.
but I really think what's important for the listener to understand is I think there's a hierarchy to those minerals.
Mm.
And obviously believe in magnesium, but I think magnesium is a downstream mineral to the dynamic between copper and iron.
Mm.
And so, and again, copper is the general, iron's the foot soldier. If you're not clear on that concept, just watch a couple just little short videos about what Patton did at the Battle of the Bulge. That's when you learn what generals do and what foot soldiers do.
Hmm.
And and he changed the history of the world by turning 90 degrees and in 48 hours moving 400 tanks,
Hmm.
160 kilometers. It's like, okay, yes, sir. But that's what general does inside our body. And the key is if copper's down, iron will take over. It has no hesitation to take
So
over.
what's the problem with iron taking over, just in case somebody doesn't know? And because people will think like, oh, we need to take iron supplements, my
No.
iron's low, I need to supplement. Or if I'm in pregnant women are always given iron infusions or, told they have anemia and they need to take iron supplements. And we fortify our cereals. Heather and I were just talking about how much fortified cereal we ate as a kid because we didn't know any better. Like, and we fortify our foods with iron because we think we need it. And what is the problem with that, Morley?
The whole thing is a narrative. It's a scam. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable. And the original research on anemia was done after the First World War,
Mm,
and they studied pregnant women. So it's important for people to know that in society, 1% of people are pregnant. The other 99% are not pregnant.
yes.
And they study pregnant women. And what's important in pregnancy is there's something called hemodilution.
Mm,
Body fluid is building, and the body doesn't produce hemoglobin to maintain the same level of um, representation. So that when a woman is not pregnant, her hemoglobin should be somewhere between 12.5 and 13.5. That's considered a really healthy hemoglobin level. And again, that represents about 80% of the iron in the body. When a woman gets pregnant, it'll stay at that 12 and a half, 13, but then it starts to go down in the second half of the pregnancy.
Mm.
And you think Mother Nature knows what she's doing? I kind of think
yeah.
she does. And so it's called hemodilution. Fluids are building, and the amount of hemoglobin per unit of fluid is going down. And a very famous OBGYN from the UK, Philip Steers, studied this in 1995.
Mm,
And he did something no one had ever done before. He, he decided to let's see what the hemoglobin level is of the mom for the healthiest babies that are born
mm,
using APGAR scores. And he, he did 150,000 live births. I'd have
wow.
been impressed if he'd done 1,500,
I
but
mean,
150,000 live births.
it's
And what he
incredible.
discovered is that the healthiest babies are produced by women who have a hemoglobin of 8.5 to 9.5,
Mm.
Mm,
well below that 12 and a half to 13 and a half,
yeah.
well below. And that study from 1995 has been deep sixed. It's not taught anywhere on the planet. And it's a tragedy because people are being flooded with iron. I have a colleague who wanted to write an article about the RCP, and we had very, very engaging conversation. And then she wrote this beautiful piece. But during that conversation, I said, I'm just curious. I'd like to know how much iron you're eating. She said, well, I'm anemic. I said, oh, I didn't
Um,
know that. I said, just tell me, why don't you figure it out? So she came back to me. Good thing I was sitting down. She was eating 84 milligrams of iron a day
Mm.
between her supplements and her food.
Oh, wow.
And I said, uh, did you know you only need 1 milligram a day?
Oh my
She
God.
said, what? And so the part that no one knows about
I
is
think
that,
most people would be surprised to hear that. You said one
well,
milligram a day.
but there's legitimacy to this. This was first identified in 1942 by Max Weintraub, who was a famous hematologist. He wrote the first textbook in hematology when he was at Hopkins, and wrote a very important article about the amount of iron it takes to recycle iron in the body.
Hmm.
So we've been talking now for about 30 minutes. And every second of every day, we have to replace 2.5 million red blood cells
Yeah.
every second. In the course of 24 hours, it's 200 billion red blood cells. So these numbers start to get really big, and you think, I can't relate to 200 billion, but obviously it's a big number. And
Mm.
so what will surprise you is that it only takes 25 milligrams of iron to make 200 billion red blood cells.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 25 milligrams is tiny. That's a very small
Hmm.
amount. But here's what's going to shock you and your listeners. 24 of those 25 milligrams come from the recycling system. Its full name is called reticuloendothelial system, RES. It took me 2 years to figure out that meant recycling. But once I figured out, I was like, oh, wait a minute. This changes things because all of the research is on dietary iron. It's not on recycling iron.
Yeah.
Again, put on your thinking cap. Who's running the recycling system?
Well, copper.
Copper, of course.
Yeah, copper helps with the iron dysregulation. So it helps regulate copper helps regulate iron is my understanding. Yeah.
Absolutely. And see, the thing is, you can't make heme without copper. You can't make
Yeah.
an iron sulfur cluster without
Yeah.
copper. You can't make hemoglobin without copper. You
Hmm.
can't recycle iron without copper. And so and you can't, but the mechanism, just so people have a sense of the beauty of it, there's a little doorway in the recycling system where the iron has to get out. So it gets back into the recycling system. Well, that doorway is controlled by a copper doorman. It's an
Mm.
iron doorway controlled by a copper doorman. And if the copper doorman's not there, the iron stays stuck, looks low on a blood test, and guess what? Then someone's
It's
told
just
they're anemic.
it's just built in the tissues, is what you're really
Right.
saying. It's unbound,
Exactly.
it's stuck in the tissues, it's
Exactly.
accumulating, creating rust and oxidative stress. And that's just going to keep getting worse as we age, especially if we don't fix copper, basically.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
aging is nothing more than iron accumulation. That's it.
Yeah.
Period. And so years ago, I'm now 73, but when I was 65, I called up this world-renowned. He's an iron biologist. His name is Robert Crichton. He's he's over in the Netherlands, and I just called him out of the blue. I said, Dr. Crichton, I have a favor to ask. He said, sure, Morley. What is it? He didn't know me from Adam. He was kind enough to take the call. I said, well, I really have enjoyed your work. And I said, would you send me a signed copy of your latest textbook? He said, I would be delighted.
Hmm.
And because they don't get many calls like that.
Yeah.
And so he got my address. He said, now, Morley, I want to make sure you know. He said, we accumulate 1 milligram of iron every day we're on the planet. Do you understand that? I said, oh yeah, I've read your work. And so that's an important thing for people to realize is that we do accumulate iron as we
Mm.
age. From the time we're born all the way to the time we're deep sixth, we're accumulating iron. So I'm 73. I've got like 28,000 milligrams of iron. That's a lot of iron. And, people need to do that calculation. Take your age times 365, and then you'll see how many milligrams you have.
Well, would that be less in a female?
Yes. So I was just going to say, no, it's actually the math is still the same.
Okay, but you get rid
The,
of
ma-
some
right. You do get
monthly.
rid of some.
Okay.
It's only about 2 milligrams. It's very
Okay.
small. It's a very
Okay.
small amount. You've been trained to think that you're losing thousands of milligrams. It's not. It's a very small amount. That's been
Okay.
done. Studies in Japan and Sweden have
Mm.
backed that up using radio tracer iron. And the whole thing is a narrative. But the thing is, guys need 5,000 milligrams. Women need 4,000 milligrams. But
Mm.
everyone has a multiple of that. I'm confident you guys are what, in your 30s, whatever, times
You're so
365.
sweet. You are.
No, just no, I don't know how I really don't know how old you are, but the thing is multiply it times 365. And
Yes.
then you're going to get a really big number.
Now,
And
this
then
doesn't matter what you're eating. You're just talking about the body does this naturally,
bingo. That's
no
Right.
what
Just
exactly
you're eating. Okay.
forget
right.
about if you ate the fortified cereals like Heather and I did when we were younger,
That's
like then
right.
you really accumulated it.
So then when this colleague says I'm eating 84 milligrams, I'm trying to think how much iron is in her tissue
Yeah.
Yeah.
because the belief is, Oh, it whatever doesn't get absorbed just gets sloughed off in the digestive process. No, it doesn't.
No, no.
It goes down to the colon. It hangs out with the pathogenic bacteria.
Right. Well, that's a
Who,
good segue to talk about iron and pathogens and how iron feeds
yeah.
pathogens. And I think that's an important
Oh,
topic as well.
Does
well,
that
yeah,
probably
and
contribute to the incidence of colorectal cancer as being so much
Mm,
absolutely, of
increasing?
course,
wow.
yeah. And so the thing is, the two cancers. I haven't studied cancer that much, but there are a couple of cancers that are really standouts. There's thyroid cancer and colon cancer are two cancers where there's zero expression of ferroxidase. It's like,
Mm,
okay, that's important to know. That means that there's no way to recycle iron in that tissue. And
Hmm.
so this all we have to do is turn this obsession with absorbing iron into recycling iron, and then suddenly we've got a mechanism for health. Because if we're just focusing on absorbing it, it's going to get stuck, and then it's going to fester. And that's really the basis of most cancers, if not all of them, is accumulation of iron. And the metabolism of there is no such thing as cancer, but there is cancer metabolism. It's a metabolic state. Back
hmm
to Vanessa's point, there is no disease. Um, it's an energy state. And what is cancer? It's the lowest form of energy production on the planet. It's
Yeah.
this very regressive form. And so I think what cancer represents is pre copper and ceruloplasmin metabolism. So there was a time before copper and ceruloplasmin were on the planet. And so
Mm,
everything was iron sulfur clusters hanging out with each other, and it was all anaerobic. And that's
mm,
basically what cancer is an anaerobic mechanism.
yeah.
And so the phrase that you may have heard of is called the Warburg effect.
hmm
And the Warburg effect, it was identified by Warburg, but he didn't put his name to it. It was someone back in the 60s who did that. But the Warburg effect is um, tissue in the presence of oxygen are going to metabolize it, right? But in
hmm
cancer cells, they go anaerobic even though oxygen's present.
mm
That's fascinating. That
Mm.
the tissue is anaerobic, it's
mm.
using anaerobic glycolysis even though oxygen's present. Well, guess what you need in order to metabolize oxygen?
Copper.
Copper. And so what do oncologists do? They suck copper out of cancer. It's like, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense at all.
That
And
doesn't make sense.
no, and what their rationale is that there's a very primal function that when copper is present, it's going to try to create blood vessels,
Mm.
angiogenesis. Why do you think copper would want to create blood vessels?
To move the iron?
Well,
Yeah.
to move on, but also to bring oxygen to the
Oh,
tissue.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
to bring oxygen. Yeah.
And so what do? They use chemotherapy.
Mhm.
Tetramolybdate is the favorite.
Mm.
And what is tetramolybdate? It's one of the most powerful copper chelators on the planet. Nuclear
Wow.
radiation. If you want to kill copper, use nuclear radiation. It'll kill copper. And then surgery, that's a great way to solve the problem, right? And what do you do with surgery? Well, you have to have antibiotics first. What do
Yeah.
antibiotics do? Blow up ceruloplasmin. Then you've followed by the trauma of surgery. It's very stressful. I'm told by practitioners that when you have a proctoscope in the anus, the inflammation goes all the way up to the mouth, which is
Oh,
amazing
I'm
to think
sure.
about.
Yeah.
And so the trauma of the surgery followed by what? Pain meds.
Yeah.
What's in the
Oh, yeah.
pain meds? Oh, chemicals that are going to destroy what? Copper status. And so it's a very
It's
backward
not only
way of
just the minerals, it's the gut microbiome, the stress, the trauma.
absolutely
Like you said, there's so much to this. It's like
right.
it's such a negative cycle that we get into with all of these. That was interesting with the antibiotics and the ceruloplasmin. I've heard you say that before. And that's so interesting because all my life I dealt with chronic infections, right? So I took a lot of antibiotics, right? So that ceruloplasma really got depleted in me, probably personally, or anybody else who used a lot of antibiotics, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me go geek on you for just 1 second. do you know anybody that has ever had a UTI?
Yeah, that's me, like all my life.
Okay. Okay.
Ooh.
I just happen to have a little chart for you.
Oh, wow.
See
Wow.
if I can make this work.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're inside the bladder. This is the
Uh-huh.
urine. This is the bladder cells up here.
Yep.
Okay. Urothelium, that's the epithelium layer.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have these UPEC, that's a urinary pathogen. It's E. coli.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Got UPEC. So how do we solve a UTI? This is an article. This is from an article. This diagram is the size of a postage stamp in the article.
Mm.
And so I had it blown up so people could actually understand it.
Yes.
And so we've got copper,
Mhm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
We've got ceruloplasmin,
Protoplasm.
right? Iron starvation. All of that is designed to kill the pathogen, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're worrying
Mm-hmm.
about the pathogens, right? Well,
Mm-hmm.
copper is the original antimicrobe. Now,
Right.
what's fascinating about this is we're actually working in the urine here.
Mm-hmm.
It turns out that ceruloplasmin isn't just made in the liver, it's made
Oh
in
no.
10 different tissues around the body.
Mm.
And one of those happens to be the urothelium.
Mm.
It's able
Wow.
to make ceruloplasmin. I've been using this chart for probably 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
See this arrow?
Mm-hmm.
See this arrow?
Mm-hmm.
I ignored those arrows. I didn't understand that the ceruloplasmin and
Was
the
coming
copper is
from
coming.
the tissue right there. Yeah.
Exactly. It's right
Yeah.
there. It's right.
Wow.
And so here's the punchline.
Yes, let's hear it.
What's the standard of care for UTI?
Oh,
Antibiotic.
antibiotics, of course.
Antibiotics, but which one in particular? There's one that's the go-to.
Well, Cipro.
Cipro,
I mean,
bingo.
Cipro has a lot of fluoride in it. That's a real big problem with
Has a lot of
Cipro.
fluoride. And what does Cipro do? It chelates copper out of the tissue.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
people who take
Mm-hmm.
Cipro will have tendon tears.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One of Dr. Liz's clients in Chicago used to hang out with a guy named Lance Armstrong on the Tour de France. He got a UTI. He was given Cipro. He
Mm-hmm.
tore his Achilles heel and could never
Yep.
ride a bike after that.
Mm.
So it's like people don't understand the power of these medications and what they do to
No.
our mineral
They
balance.
think it's very like, oh, it's no big deal. I'll just take it and everything will go away. And honestly, I don't think the infection, the pathogen goes away at all after an
No,
antibiotic. No, you
no.
just suppressed it. You suppressed the symptoms your body was, that you suppressed what your body was trying to, the symptoms are how your body's trying to heal and express. So you didn't really get anywhere. You just,
That that's exactly right.
yeah.
And the thing is, and that's just one class. We could talk about ascorbic acid. We could talk
Yeah,
about
that's a great
hormone
one.
replacement therapy. We could talk about a lot of different chemicals that we're exposed to. They get back to
Yeah.
the point that you raised earlier, Vanessa, about unbound copper.
Hmm.
It's not the thing is, it's unbound from ceruloplasmin. Copper is
Hmm.
never unbound in the body. It's going to be
Hmm.
bound to, if it's not bound to ceruloplasmin, it's going to be bound to histidine, it's going to be bound to transcuprine, it's going to be bound to, um, um, oh my goodness, what's the major protein? Begins with A. Um,
Oh, I know. Major
glo-
protein begins with an A. I don't know.
I don't know.
what's globulin, AG, the AG ratio, in any event. That's very funny. My mind just shut down. So the thing is, it's always bound to a protein, always
Yes.
bound to a protein. And this perception of copper toxicity, it's a very, I think, in my humble opinion, it's a very artificial term.
Yeah.
Um, there's several copper scientists who've studied it, and there's less than one unbound copper atom per cell. This idea, you have this image of hundreds or thousands of copper atoms just destroying. No, it's so rare. It's actually it's called zeptomole. It's
Mm.
one 0. It's 21 zeros before the one is how
Hmm.
frequent the copper is inside the cell. And so we have this distortion of reality by an alarmist field that is ignoring iron completely.
Mm.
And there's easily 100 times more iron than there is copper. And everyone's preoccupied with the toxicity of copper. And they're giving iron the pass, not realizing that that is the source of the problem. And
Mm.
that's where the aging begins. That's where the oxidative stress begins. And again, we can't live without it. It's absolutely essential. But it's really critical to understand that this dynamic between copper and iron, it's primal. It goes back to the beginning of time, and it is very poorly understood in scientific and clinical circles, at least as I've uncovered it.
Is that the reason you, I mean, attribute to why we're so inverted? Because the focus should be on iron toxicity and then copper,
Mhm.
low copper. So it just seems so crazy, like crazy making how we got here.
Well, well, the meme that runs medicine is you're anemic and you're copper toxic. So create this belief that I can take as much iron as I want. It's not going to cause me any problems, and be
Mm.
deathly afraid of copper. I've had, I bet I've had 20 or more practitioners when I tell them you really need to start focusing on copper. Oh, no, 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 no. That's
Yeah.
very, that's
People
the
are afraid
first
of
thing.
it.
They are
Yeah.
absolutely afraid of it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly, if I was trying to control humanity, that's exactly what I'd want people thinking, is that copper is going to really do them in. When in fact
Mm.
it's the source of vitality.
Wow. Mm.
Hmm.
And so again, the one of my favorite
Just
quotes
another
comes,
lie, like the cholesterol lie. Sorry.
"Oh yeah,
It's
yeah.
just like
No,
it's
no, 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 it is."
yeah.
And so speaking of that, here's a little background on that. So one of my heroes is a guy named Leslie Clavet. He'll be 92 or 93 this April, and he's a cardiologist and a copper expert. He's been studying copper for probably 60 years. That's a long time. But in 1973, he did a study where he was able to prove that lack of copper causes cholesterol to rise in the tissue,
Yes.
especially in the liver. Okay. 1973.
Mm-hmm.
So for that fact to become science, one other lab needed to replicate his findings. Just one lab. Since
Mm-hmm.
1973, over 30 labs have proven
Oh,
that Dr. Clavet was right,
wow.
that there is this very dynamic relationship between copper and lipid metabolism, especially
Mm.
cholesterol metabolism. And where do we live? On a planet where statins is the number
Mm.
one product, $1 trillion industry, and people are terrified of cholesterol
Mm.
because they don't know about copper.
Copper.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
so
that's so sad.
one of the more interesting studies I came across was 1951, and they were doing studies back to 1941, looking at cholesterol levels, and they were observing this sudden rise of cholesterol levels in human subjects in the early 50s. And they were just kind of surprised at how it had risen. Well, it actually makes a lot of sense. What happened in 1941? They started to fortify the wheat flour with iron, which is highly reactive, which is and what is cholesterol? It's a sink for oxygen because it takes 11 molecules of oxygen to make one molecule of cholesterol. And so the body is realizing, oh my gosh, I can't metabolize this oxygen. I'll make
Mm.
cholesterol, pack it in there. And the cholesterol levels were rising in these human subjects in the study, and they couldn't figure it out. But it makes such perfect sense when you look back on it, because as soon as you start injecting iron filings into the food system, what are you going to do to copper status in the body? It's going to kill it,
Tank it. Tank it.
absolutely
Yeah.
tank it.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
what I
goodness.
was reading this morning, of a buddy of mine who lives in the same townhouse complex, he's my he, you think I'm a geek? He's the ultimate geek researcher. And we were looking up research with animals using the ferroxidase assay. So you have a ceruloplasmin protein, one of the biggest proteins in the body, So 1,046 amino acids. That's a beast. To give people an order of magnitude, insulin is, or no, hepcidin is 25 amino acids. Insulin is like 45 amino acids. So 1,046 is huge, has 8 copper atoms inside it. And it's like a transformer. It it can fold and express different enzyme functions. It isn't just one. I've identified 9 different enzyme functions. And so people don't realize the power inside their body that's being enabled by this copper and this copper protein, and the confusion that exists around that. And so that if that enzyme starts to go south, it brings in this wave of dysfunction. And they've been measuring this in animal studies. What happens if the ceruloplasmin activity, the ferroxidase activity, starts to go south? I was like, I've never found human studies like that, but they're studying it in sheep and pigs and horses and cattle. It's absolutely amazing what they know about the ferroxidase activity inside these animals, and what impact withholding copper has on the expression of that protein and its enzyme functions. And one of the things that I discovered, it's actually really kind of scary. And as I was doing my deep dive into the kidney, I was intrigued. I wonder if there's a correlation between stage of kidney disease, because it's stage 1 through 5. Stage 5 is considered end stage, with the capacity of ferroxidase activity. How much oomph, how much vitality does this enzyme have? And they are absolutely locked together, that the higher the number goes in kidney disease, the lower the enzyme expression is in ceruloplasmin. They know exactly what the number is.
Wow.
So it's just, we live in a very funny world where we're not allowed to do this complete testing. And what I've just learned in the past week is that there are centers around the country, academic medical centers, that study Wilson's disease, which is a recognized genetic defect, and they do the ferroxidase activity testing all the time on these students, or on these patients. So I'm going to see if I can't get that test done at one of those centers.
For yourself?
What's that?
For you?
Yeah, I think, I mean, to me, it's an integrity issue. We should be able to do this testing.
Yes, absolutely.
But I'm not trying to change the system. I'm really not. I'm just trying to educate people that the body has incredible powers of recovery. And I think that people should be given a choice. Do you want to stay within the system, or do you want to opt out? We're asked that every time we're dealing with the internet. Do you want to opt in or opt out? Yeah, I want to opt out. I think I want to opt out of the medical system and do it on my own. And we should have that. I think that would be a basic human right, is we can opt in or opt out.
I agree.
One of the most frustrating things about living in New York, not to interrupt you, is you can't run your own blood work. It's like,
I know.
that is so stupid. Like, why do I not have the right, because I live in New York, to run my own blood work?
Absolutely agree.
It's
like handicapping you, because then you can't empower yourself and figure out how to fix yourself, right?
No, I have to be chained to the medical system if I want to have blood work done. And I don't want to be. So I just don't run blood work. And I'm like, oh, I'll just go by my symptoms and figure it out. Like, and I mean, that's what I do. But
you can go over to Pennsylvania or Connecticut.
Yeah, I know. It's just like, you got to go do it. It's just like annoying. It's like ridiculous.
I know.
It's a drive.
It's a drive. That's right. Yeah. How badly do you want it?
Exactly. Not that much, really. I'm like, I don't love looking at blood work personally, but I know you do. Like, it's not my thing. I'm more like, I can figure it out other ways. But yeah, it's an interesting insight of things for sure. Morley, I had this question for you about iron and fear and emotions and what's going on there. Because I think that people who have an iron dysregulation, there is more fear in that person. Or I don't know, I've made that correlation before, and I'm thinking, what do you think about that? And I'm also wondering, well, of course, we need energy production to have emotional regulation, right?
Sure.
100%.
Absolutely.
Right. And I also am just wondering, do you think getting minerals back in balance is enough to fuel or to fix emotional imbalances? That's my one
Right,
question. And is there a correlation between fear and iron that you've seen and things like that, or just the
right,
stress and all that?
right.
And
So,
pathogens. Yeah.
right. Um, there's a very important article written in 2019 about how fear creates cancer. And
Mhm.
what it does is it creates hypoxia, and
Mm.
then it creates hypoxia in the cell and cancer in the human. And so, wonderful article, and it's really focused on cortisol, and the lead author's name is Zaman, Zamin Pira, Pira, all one word, Zaman Pira, 2019. Um, but albumin is the protein I was trying to think of before.
Oh yeah.
Albumin, yes. So coppers either attached to albumin, to histidine, or transcuprine. Um, and I didn't look it up on my phone.
Good job.
This is, but the thing is, the there's a little known mechanism around um, adrenaline, is that it will stimulate the production of something called hepcidin. And hepcidin is the iron hormone that is being taught as the regulator for iron. It's actually a negative regulator. And so this is a very, very powerful peptide in our body.
Mm.
Um, Again, it's only 25 amino acids long,
Mhm.
and which is tiny. Um, and it has tremendous influence over what happens to iron in the recycling system. Is that if you are in a fear state, hepcidin is going to rise. And
Mm.
then what that's going to do is it's going to block the ability of the copper doorman to open up the iron doorway to let the iron into the recycling system.
I see. Yeah.
And it's an ancient mechanism that goes back again to the beginning of time because um, good bacteria are in the gut, bad bacteria are in the blood. And the
Mm.
body knows, the immune system knows this. And what the immune system senses is as soon as there's a stressful situation, knows that the person's vulnerable, it's going to sequester that iron, put it back into the recycling system, get it away from the pathogens. And
Mm.
it uses hepcidin to do that. So hepcidin is hepatic killer.
Hmm.
It Sidon, suicide, homicide, right? Um,
Yeah.
Genocide. So, and what's fascinating about hepcidin is that it actually does. There's a third job. So it's sequestering iron. It's going to
Mhm.
kill the pathogens. It's a conserved function, but it's also the start of the wound repair. It's amazing. But what needs to be attached to hepcidin to make the wound repair function?
Well, it's copper for
Of
sure.
course it is, right? And so I've read hundreds of articles about hepcidin and only two that talk about copper being critical for its function. And so it's just there's a lot of mystery and intrigue around that. But the thing is, the notion of fear is going to be we're either going to fight the bear or we're going to
Mhm.
run from the bear, right? That's what
Mhm.
this hormone release is designed to get us prepared to either fight it or flight. And on the critical aspect of it is that it's not as short term as people want to believe it is. That
Mm.
fear response stays with you,
Yes.
especially in the modern era.
Mhm.
And what we've learned that there's studies that they were originally started in the 80s, but they're being played out now in big time in the current literature. But in the 80s, they developed two different stress models. One is called chronic social defeat stress,
Mm.
and the other is called repeat, restraint, stress.
Mm.
So they literally tie down the rodents and they can't get out. So when were those two models fully implemented? In 2020. Chronic social defeat stress,
Oh yeah, that was huge. Yeah.
right? And
Hmm.
repeated restraint stress. Don't leave your home. You're not allowed
Yeah.
to leave. Don't go out.
Well, that
And
fear was through the roof in people. I mean, it wasn't
fear was
myself, and it was,
fear was through the roof. And what people didn't know is that that was affecting chemistry that was disrupting their iron. And
yeah.
so, depending upon which model you're going after, you're ultimately going to increase interleukin 6, which is a very
Hmm.
important cytokine, inflammatory cytokine.
Yeah.
And interleukin 6 is really good at increasing hepcidin.
Mm.
And so, the part that people don't truly appreciate is that there is a lot of iron dysregulation, but it's all been dumped into anemia. No, it's low iron in a blood test, but what is it really? It's really functional iron deficiency as opposed to absolute iron deficiency. They are
Right.
miles apart. And as soon as you're in a state of chronic stress, hepcidin is pumping, and then the iron recycling system is shut down, and you look anemic on paper when in fact you're iron toxic in the tissue.
Exactly.
That's the key. And so the phrase that we use within the RCP is we spell fear with a hyphen between the E and the A. Fe-AR. And that way you see the symbol for iron.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you go into a fear state, you become a magnet for iron.
Mm.
And that's what's happening. That at a tissue level, iron is being held back. It's not being allowed to
Mm.
circulate and recycle. And that's when you begin to really build oxidative stress and you really begin to break down the integrity of the tissue.
Hmm.
Does that
Hmm.
make sense?
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. Yeah, that was a great
But
explanation. Thank you.
but Zamanpira, the article by Zamanpira is absolutely a blockbuster article, but they don't talk about the minerals. That's the weakness of the
Mhm.
article. They just focus on the hormones. And then the more recent stress articles, all you got to do is Google stress anemia, and there's just going to be all sorts of research that's going to pop up. And no one talks about this facet.
Yeah.
Every solution to anemia is iron. No. In fact, what I learned last week is that 60% of anemia today is considered functional iron deficiency, not absolute. Well, every practitioner I've ever heard of immediately goes to you need more iron. And
Oh yeah.
they're not thinking about stress of the individual. They're not thinking about copper status of the individual. They're not thinking about ceruloplasmin status of the individual. Everything is always geared towards iron, and it's bypassing what I think are the real mechanisms. It's this chronic state of fear and stress that we're under by so-called modern society, and just the mineral dysregulation in our food that is really making it almost impossible to stay in balance.
Yeah. Well, not only if you're eating processed and packaged food, forget it. That's a really bad idea.
Right,
But even if you're going to say good organic farms, unfortunately, the mineral, status in those soils are just not what they used to be. And that's a
right.
really challenging thing too. Which is so very interesting. And I like almost fight with myself about like taking minerals or taking supplements because they always have like other additives in it that I don't
Mhm.
love. And I'm very
That's right.
like, I want to get all my nutrients from food. I love that you promoted in your book about bee pollen for B vitamins. I was like, yes, win, because I that's one thing that it's one of the things I do. And
Mhm.
I'm like, I want to get everything I can from food, but like, can
Sure.
we actually is the question. And then
Right.
the other thing I wanted to ask you too, because it was rummaging through my mind as we were having this conversation, did the taking away of copper pipes cause more copper dysregulation? And drinking from a copper cup, is that actually a good thing or not? These other thoughts were coming in my brain.
Well, copper vessels have been used for thousands of years, but in societies that didn't have sanitation per se.
Hmm.
So you got to be careful about that. But
Yeah.
but I I share that wonderment about changing out copper pipes for PCV. I'm like, was that a step in the right direction? And
Mm.
but there are scientists that feel very strongly that the copper in the pipes is what's causing Alzheimer's. And like, oh my gosh, there's a point of departure there, and we'd have to spend several hours explaining it because you've got some people who feel very strongly that the copper in those pipes was the cause, as opposed to someone like Ashley Bush down at University of Melbourne, who's like, no, that's not what's going on at all. So
Yeah.
I side with people like Dr. Bush, um,
Mm.
and it's hard to get people to get away from the headlines. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
these headlines stick. You're copper toxic, and it's hard to get people to kind of step back from the ledge and begin to reason what's really going on.
Mm. Okay, so do you think drinking from a copper cup is a good idea or a bad idea, was my question. Do you
I,
think that's
you
any
know,
benefit to that, or is it waste of time? I thought,
I don't know that I wouldn't say it's a waste of time. It's not going to restore physiological levels of copper. It is
mm,
a wonderful antimicrobe. It's proven. I
mm,
think it's like 97% of the pathogens are knocked out, and that's
oh,
amazing. Um, and it may
mm,
even be higher than that. But as a way to restore copper status, no. It's a very small amount. So the beauty and the curse of copper is a little bit goes a long way.
mm,
And so when people are struggling with symptoms, that means that they're pretty close to depletion. I mean,
mm,
that's really what we've got to come to terms with. And I was researching this morning about, I was inspired by these animal studies, and I was looking about the copper translocation from mother to fetus. It's a really big deal in mammals. It's a very, very
mm,
important part of our um, survival mechanism. And I know it was a study, I want to say it was from either the 30s or the 50s. I'm going to have to go into um, my records. But they were documenting that there was a 70 milligram download from mom to fetus during the third trimester of the pregnancy,
wow,
70 milligrams, as adults were supposed to have 100 milligrams. And what they noted, and this is true for all mammals, there's an enormous download of, or translocation. That's the actual technical term. It's not download. I like download, but it's the mom's fetus is downloading. It's actually probably the placenta is downloading it to the fetus. But it varies from animal to animal how much copper gets downloaded. And
mm,
what they and so I said, so what's the basis of the 70 milligrams for the human? And what AI came back with this morning was, oh, it's not 70, it's closer to 30 milligrams of copper. And I went,
mm,
oh my gosh, so that would explain where the problem is.
mhm.
That the infant's supposed to get 70 and is now in the modern era is getting 30. Well, you've just cut the battery capacity in half.
Yeah, it's huge.
And that,
This is making me think of something else because the conversation keeps making me think of all different things. I was reading this one book about how we all the animals used to eat the placenta and we used to too, and there
yes.
was nutrients in there that we actually needed. But one, I think they were talking about zinc. It would help with zinc issues, if I remember correctly, but
Well,
maybe it's not. I don't know.
well, there's
What do
no
you-
question there would be zinc in there, but
Yeah,
there's also a lot of copper. It's going to be a lot of
yeah.
iron in there. Um,
Hmm.
and and I absolutely understand why historically they would have done that. I'm not sure I would eat a modern placenta. I'd be able
Who
to,
knows what's in it now? Yeah.
no, and the placenta is actually called the forgotten organ. And people
Mm.
don't understand what its job is and how important it is for copper iron regulation between the mom and the baby. And
Mm,
and so the technical term for this class of copper enzymes is called multi-copper ferroxidases. They're called MCFs, and they literally go back to the beginning of time. So that when oxygen first appeared on the planet, they were able to convert oxygen into water so that it didn't create chaos. And so the the concept of complex 4, it's a multi-copper ferroxidase.
Yeah.
Well, there are actually three of them in the human body. We have ceruloplasmin expressing ferroxidase. Its cousin is called hephaestin, named after Hephaestus in the Roman
Yeah.
folklore, right? But there's a third one called zyclopen for
Mm.
cyclops, right?
Wow.
Zyclopen is Zyklopen. Now, zyclopen is extremely important because it's what makes sure that the iron gets to the fetus and that
Mm.
it's really, really, it's a very essential part of their physiology. And it was, I believe it was Harry McArdle at University of Aberdeen. He and his team discovered this back in like 2008, 2010, something like that. And I'll give you $1,000 for every OBGYN and every midwife you can find that know what zyclopen is.
Zero.
They've never heard of it.
Zero.
And so what's the focus of modern birthing practice? It's around iron and vitamin D.
Yeah.
If you want to
And
have
prenatal vitamins and yeah.
right, but if you want to have a healthy fetus, if you want to have healthy fetal brain development, it's very clear what you need. You need vitamin A,
Hmm.
magnesium, and copper.
Hmm.
And,
Yeah.
and they're the antithesis of iron and vitamin D.
And when you say that, you're saying to get the vitamin A from food, more or less, or yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think the best sources are going to be cod liver oil or beef liver.
Hmm. Yeah.
And
And now
and
sourcing that then can now be an issue as well.
sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a snake under every rock, but
Yeah.
but I think it's when you look at the research that Weston A. Price did, there's no
Yes.
question our ancient ancestors understood this very clearly how important fat is, especially the
Yes.
fat soluble vitamins, how important the minerals are. And I think if Dr. Price had lived like another decade, he would have really honed in on these minerals. He just
Hmm.
he put a lot of I mean he changed our understanding of nutrition through his research. But
Absolutely.
I think he didn't have a chance to really tie the loop between the fat and the minerals and how important they
Hmm.
are.
Yeah, they're so intertwined. We're coming close to the end here, and this has just been so fun. We would love to have you back anytime because there's just so
Oh,
much more we didn't have a chance to ask you. I have like 20 other questions in my brain. But just for our listeners to tie it up, what would you suggest if they could do a couple things to get their, copper imbalance or more imbalance and their iron more
right.
imbalance and the mineral? What would you say? What would you suggest?
Well, great question. When I started this work 17 years ago, I was very Newtonian. Uh, Legend has it that there's a branch of my family that were Newtons. My grandmother's brother's name was Newton Matthews, and allegedly we descend from that family. But Sir Isaac didn't have any children, so I know I'm not a direct descendant. And the reason why I absolutely know I'm not a direct descendant is because I failed calculus and he invented it. So it's like there's no chance of a connection there. But in any event, um, when I started, I was very Newtonian, very focused on we just need the nutrients, need the mineral, the vitamins, whatever, and everything's going to be fine. Now, 17 years later, I'm very quantum, and everything starts with emotions.
Yeah.
100% starts
Oh,
with
I love you said
emotions.
that. Hmm.
And people need to come to terms with that. In our society, people would much rather pop a pill
Oh, yeah.
than pull out the fear, the emotional hurt, the whatever the source of their unrest is. And there's some very powerful techniques like integrative processing technique, emotion code, EFT. But the key is you got to work with a practitioner. People who are drawn to this kind of empowered self-healing are really smart. And what are people with high IQ? What are the two genetic defects that we have? We are control freaks.
Oh, yeah.
We don't know how to let go. And we love complexity.
Yeah.
And we can't believe that just talking to this practitioner is going to help me release this crisis that I've been dealing with.
And
And
we don't realize how quickly we can do it because I'll bring in flower essences and tissue, I mean, and
right,
homeopathy for that as well, for emotional
sure.
regulation. I mean, Heather and I talk about how emotional regulation is the root cause, is a big, huge part of the root cause of chronic issues, is not having your emotions in check. So to me, that you brought it to that full circle at the end here is beautiful.
No, it's very, very, very important. And I'll use myself as an example. When I grew up in a family with an alcoholic mom and a dad who had manic depression and
Mm.
schizophrenia. So it's a
Oh,
lot of
wow.
excitement.
Yes.
And when I was 6 years old, my dad was scheduled to have a second electric shock therapy. If
Mm.
you've seen Cuckoo's Nest, you know what that's all about. And he said, that's not going to happen. And he literally ran away from home,
Mm.
never to come back.
Wow.
So what do you think a little 6-year-old boy thought? I
Mm.
caused my dad to run away from home.
Yeah, of
Would be the
course.
only that would be the only rational explanation. And so I only carried that wound for about 51 years.
Oh,
And I mean, literally can laugh about it now, but it was emotional freedom technique. Two
mm.
sessions got
Yeah.
me to realize I didn't do that,
No.
and I released this fear that I had caused my dad to leave
Mm.
home, and the world went from black and white to Kodachrome.
That
Mhm.
was
So that's
tapping. You did the tapping, emotional freedom.
I did
Yeah.
tapping,
Yeah.
and it was an amazing experience. So I'd say, absolutely, people, it's very, very important. If you really want to get back into balance, you've got to deal with the emotional hurt that's running your chemistry. It's very powerful,
Beautiful.
and
Hmm.
people don't understand it at the level that I think they should. So that would be number one. Number two is you really need to get copper and the minerals back into your diet. Um, and again, I put copper at the top. I really think there is a hierarchy. And what people need to come to terms with is that we live in a world where glyphosate,
Oh, yeah.
Roundup, has been on the planet for over 30 years now. And the mineral status of the soil and the mineral status of the food has affected the mineral status of the human. And so we just have to come to terms with that. And there was real intent in my inspiring the creation of Recuperate. I didn't do that. Oh, I've got a chance to make a lot of money now. I'm really just trying to get people a chance. And so the whole basis is getting this critical nutrient, copper, coupled with retinol, because there's a lot of beef liver in that product, just
Mm.
getting that primal mechanism of communication back to start firing up these copper enzymes. We must have talked about 8 or 9 of them just in the course of our conversation, ones that people have never heard of. And it's just getting people to realize the power of magnesium, the power of potassium, the power of
Hmm.
salt, and just how important these basic minerals are. We are energy and light beings, and they don't work without minerals.
I love that.
It's that basic. And so I think it's important for people to release the fear, but whatever its origin is, it doesn't matter. It's part of the human drama. We are at some point in our lives, there's going to be some crisis that defines us, and then we got to
Mhm.
come to terms with it. And I think we just need to be very mindful of the um, the mineral status. But then the third thing would be make sure that you're doing everything you can to optimize energy production, as you were talking about throughout the program. It's just that's really what allows our body to stay in balance. And if you've ever been on a boogie board, like if you're getting ready to go skiing, if you're on one side or the other, there's no energy required because it's stationary. But
Yeah.
as soon as you try to get into the middle, that takes a lot of
Hmm.
energy in the thighs, especially to maintain that balance, right?
That's a good analogy. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Mhm.
we need to be able to generate energy to stay in balance. And it really plays out in these pumps all over the body. 50%, I think it's 50% of the energy we expend every day is managing sodium and potassium. Think
Mm.
about that. 50% of our energy production.
That's a
It's just
lot.
it's just keeping those two minerals in balance. And
Mm.
and the reason why the renal potassium wasting is so important is if you're taking a supplement vitamin D supplement that's driving potassium out, guess what takes its place? When
Mhm.
potassium's not in the cell, who's coming into the cell?
Calcium,
Sodium?
Iron.
Oh,
iron.
iron. Of course it would be iron, but I was thinking sodium, potassium of the opposite
Right.
regulation. No.
No, iron comes flooding into
Ah,
the tissue.
goodness.
And that's not a good thing. And
No.
who likes to play with sodium? Iron? I mean,
Mm,
it's like so
mm,
it's just it's really basics and just getting people to realize that um, we we have this elegant design. It is very responsive. If I'm working with someone who's super sensitive, like it sounds like Vanessa, you might be super sensitive. You have
yeah.
low
We'll have
copper
a
and
lot of
high iron.
water.
Well,
Yeah,
but
probably.
no,
Yeah,
no.
probably.
I've seen it over the years. I've seen a lot of very sensitive clients, and they have very low expressions of copper and very high expressions of iron. And so
Yeah.
it's a gradual process of getting them back in balance. And I think the final thing I would encourage people to do is don't be afraid to dump not just your fear, dump your iron.
Yeah.
Do blood donations. Very, very
Mm,
important to regularly um, discharge the iron, and especially for men and for postmenopausal women. Very, very important. But even women who have a menstrual cycle should be at least twice a year donating blood. And I've got many, many women in the RCP community who do it 4 times a year,
mm,
above and beyond their menstrual loss. So
mm.
I think people are we've been trained to believe that we need more iron. Actually, we need to do just the opposite. We need to be shedding the iron. We can't live without it, but it's got to be absolutely regulated by the metabolic and immune pathways that are, for the most part, being run by copper. So
Mhm.
people just need to know that.
This has been
Oh,
so enlightening, Morley. Thank
yeah.
you so much. There's so, I mean, it's so vast, right? But there's the central tenets of your approach. And
Mhm.
if people want to find out more, you have some great resources. Your book. This is the older one. You have a new edition though, called Cure, right? Your Fatigue.
Cure
And
your
then the root
fatigue.
cause protocol. And are you still doing individual consults as well?
No, I don't. This is the cover of the new book, so
Yeah.
just so
Oh,
people know what
nice. Yeah.
it's not quite that big, but um, but no, I don't do. I mean, I still talk to people all the time. I regularly give out my email address, morleyrobbins@gmail.com, and I
Mm.
regularly give out my phone number, 847-922-8061. And the best part of my day is I get calls from people all over the world, and the call always starts with hypoxia. When I
Mm.
answer the phone, they go, I didn't think you would answer. And I always do. If I'm available, I will always answer. If not, I'll call you
Wow.
back, I promise. But
So
sometimes
generous.
people just need to talk it out.
Yeah,
And
that's very generous.
yeah, no, it's actually it it I found it to be a real stress reliever for me because what people will do instead of that is they'll send these mega emails.
Yeah.
Oh, that just takes energy out of my body. But
Yeah. It's
but
actually easier to just call them.
yeah,
So
it's
call them, don't email them.
exactly. No, I'm serious. Um, but no, this has been an unexpected rebirth of my being. I've never had so much fun. I've never worked so hard in my life,
Yeah, I can
but it has
imagine.
a lot of upside to it.
Yeah.
And I really delight in having conversations like this because a lot of people are really seeking to understand, is there another way?
Yeah.
They know what happened 5 or 6 years ago, that was when people are suddenly waking up now. They're like, there must be another way. Well, this is another way. It's not the
Yeah.
only way, but it
Yeah.
is a viable other way that
Yeah.
puts people back in control, gives them a chance to really restore the foundation of their health, and then they can build on that, which I think
Yeah,
is
no, it's
important.
huge. It's a huge asset. And we thank you so much for your work and your studies
Sure.
and writing these
Yes.
books and doing all this. I mean, we know you work really hard and study a lot. I know that. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, no. And I wouldn't do it if I didn't enjoy it. I mean, I
Right.
really,
It's a passion. You're
it
feeling that
is.
passion and love. You really you that it comes through so much. You can see it when you talk. It's like you love to talk about it. That's why you
Oh,
don't mind
no, I
answering
do.
phone calls. Yeah,
No,
because it's fun for you and too, which is great. It's how you're feeling your soul's purpose in a big way.
a- Absolutely. And I mean, I've done about 400 of these conversations, and
Yeah.
I'm going to keep doing them up until the day I get deep sixed,
Oh,
and that's it.
yeah. Well, you're welcome to come back anytime.
Oh,
I know
I
you're
would,
gonna live a lot longer.
no, no,
You're
no.
gonna love it.
I look forward to that, and I would be delighted to come back because I think this is what I've learned over the years is that in a conversation like this, it's always fun to get the initial volley out.
Hmm.
Then I often will challenge the host. Do you want to do a full Monty Iron panel? That's always really fun to do that, and we can interpret it online or offline, however you want to do it, and share that information. And that's when the questions start. And then there's a whole
Yeah.
conversation about answering the questions that people
Yeah.
finally have the courage to ask. So
Yeah.
you think of it as a multi-step process of educating your community because I think they'll really
Yeah.
appreciate that.
That'd be
Yeah, that would
great.
be awesome.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll
Yeah.
send you a link for the blood test. I don't have control over the cost. It's like 285, but
Yeah.
I think and of course, Vanessa, you'd have to drive
Travel.
somewhere, you know, get over it. And the people that live in St. George are doing just fine. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's
They don't
right.
have to drive. Hey, maybe you guys get together physically. You know, do it at
Oh my
Heather's
goodness.
house.
Yeah, I really need to I need to go to Utah. Yeah, so
Right.
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. But when you do get the blood test done, then we can have a really fun dialogue about it. I think you would
Mhm.
be really intrigued by what it reveals.
Yes.
So it's just something for
Good.
people to be thinking about.
Yeah, that
Wonderful.
would be awesome. Oh,
Mhm.
well, this has been so fun, Morley. Thank you so much for coming on, and we look forward to the next chat.
Well, I do as well. You
Yeah.
guys have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.